All right. Welcome to the maiden voyage of Kingdome Cut with Jack Parker and Martin Santos. Jack, we're
All
doing
right.
this.
We are getting it started finally.
All right. Talked about this podcast for a long time now, and finally doing it. We're going to be basically an all-around Seattle sports podcast. We're going to cover everything from football, baseball, soccer, maybe a little college football and basketball, and maybe one day some NBA too. So
Hey, maybe some hockey if the
Oh.
arena gets done down here.
yeah, there's a lot that we could obviously get to, but yeah, I mean, just in this show alone today, we'll cover some Seahawks talk with the game today that went down here in Minnesota, and then some hot stove news going down with the Mariners and Iwakuma. So just a lot to get to already on our first show.
Yeah, I think we should maybe talk about what or why we wanted to start this and what's our motivation behind it, and then maybe explain the name as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I've always wanted to get involved with sports, so I think starting a podcast and kind of expanding my horizons into sports media, I think it's what I want to do. So I want to get going on it. I love talking about sports. I love talking about Seattle sports. What better way to do it?
Here's the thing, though. You're in Seattle right now. I'm in Minnesota. We're not even nowhere near each other, and we're still doing a sports podcast show.
Hey,
So
you got to do what you got to do.
commitment is commitment. No time to sleep. Separation's the preparation.
100 yards, 100 yards.
That's what we're doing. But so yeah, obviously, I mean, I've had some experience with radio and with being connected in sports already. I've hosted the Average Joe Sports Show on a local radio station in southern Minnesota for the last about year and a half. So I have a connection. So I'd love to continue doing that and sharing it, obviously, with anyone that's willing to listen.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have more on your connections a little bit later in the podcast. But I mean, I think this is just the way to kind of get going and see how this goes. I'm excited. We're gonna kind of see how this first episode goes and go from there. The name,
Kingdome Cut. Let's talk about Kingdome Cut for a second.
Kingdome Cut. It might catch people off guard a little bit at first, but we want to start from like where it all came from. It all came from the Kingdome. The Mariners played there. They were born there. The Seahawks were born there. Sonics played there for a little bit. Everyone's kind of had a little bit of history inside the Kingdome, and when we were born, that's where we went to go see games. That's where my childhood started. That's where my love for sports grew at the Kingdome. So I feel like we're cut from that cloth. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I keep thinking about everything that's gone on there. It's literally the mecca of sports in the Northwest and in Seattle itself, from hosting Final Four matchups to, monster truck stuff there. It did everything. And so obviously that's kind of what we wanted to pay homage to, is the fact that we're cut from the Kingdome. That's where it all started for us. And that's why we kind of want to pay homage to it and say, thanks for everything it gave us. And, it's gone now. So it's obviously something we can look back at as basically our childhood. So yeah. I'm excited. I like it.
I got a piece of the rubble stored away with the date on it from when it was demolished. I've got that somewhere in my garage or something. I don't know. But, I mean, I feel like it brings up – I mean, we still talk about sports in the 90s, even though we were little kids. I mean, the 90s, 95 kept the Mariners in town. They were going to move. That happened at the Kingdome. It's just where it all started. I feel like it's a good name for our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but with that, let's start hitting what we're here to do.
Yeah. This is what we play for.
Yeah, this is what the tunnel at the Rose Bowl.
Uh-huh.
Now, here's the thing. We have to kind of apologize for the fact that we are so far apart right now. We're in different time zones. I don't know when you want to talk. You don't know when I want to talk. So it might be a little off here while we're trying to warm up and get it going. So obviously, Apologies for that.
The main voyage.
Maiden voyage. There you go. So the first thing we can want to hit earlier today, the Seattle Seahawks were here in Minnesota, where I'm at, and they played the Vikings, and they threw down pretty hard.
Yeah, came out hot, stayed hot. It was probably the most dominating win that they've had since maybe Super Bowl 48. It's the biggest regular season win they've had since 2012, I believe, when they won. When they had that stretch against the Cardinals and Bills, and I can't remember the third team, maybe it was the Niners, where they just went off on them. It was huge. I mean, it looks like a completely different team than we saw 3 months ago. The offense is totally transformed with people that we hadn't heard of a year ago, and it's crazy what's been going on. It's been such a roller coaster of a season, and it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say, too, that this is probably the best game you've seen out of Russell since, I would even say, Soldier Field a couple of years ago when he came back with that victory. Just a huge game. And you didn't expect it at first. At least I didn't expect it at first with that first drive where it just didn't seem like it was going to click all right away. But all of a sudden you're starting to see that offensive line kind of tighten up, and things seem like they're getting better and better each week. And I don't know how we're not excited right now after seeing this game.
I mean, it's so hard to get super excited because the record's still 7-5, and you still got to be looking over your shoulder constantly for a playoff spot. I mean, now they have a full game lead on it, but it's a little scary still. But the way they're playing, like the way they played today, is at one of the highest levels I've seen them during this 3-4 year run that they've had since Russell's been quarterback. It's pretty ridiculous how far they've come from the beginning of the year. Russell's getting rid of the ball like ridiculously fast. He's not panicking in the pocket. And yeah, what you said about the O-line, like they've really shored up. I saw something today that said they only have 7 sacks in the past 5 games, and they had 31 in the first 7 games.
Wow. So,
I mean, that goes both ways. That's them being better, and then that's Russell hitting his routes fast, and the receivers getting separation quick. So it's an all-around effort. But if Seattle's gonna get to the playoffs and do any damage, it's gonna be Russell's show with Jimmy and Marshawn down.
Yeah, and the best part right now that I think we're seeing is that he has been better in the pocket. He's been better when he scrambles. And you can tell when all of that's working, when all that's one single piece, when he's out there running around and getting around people, it just looks smoother. It looks better. Where when he has to break out of that pocket earlier than he should, it just doesn't look comfortable when he's scrambling around at that point. It almost looks clunky and just not the Russell that we've been so used to over the last few years.
I remember back in 2012 when Russell came here, one of his big cliches that he used in his press conferences was he's got to stay on schedule. Talking about if we do these early down plays right, it sets up our third down plays right. So we're not behind the sticks. We're not going 3rd and longs. I think it makes everything easier. And staying on schedule also goes with getting rid of the ball quick, hitting their first read when he comes open rather than doubting whether it's there or worrying about the protection. He's just been dialed in, zeroed in, just on top of it the past couple of weeks. I mean, this isn't the type of passing performances we're used to since Pete Carroll got here. No slight to Russell in that, but normally it's just been the offense holding him back, the style of the offense. And now it's like he's breaking out from it, that it's his offense and he's taken over. Pretty ridiculous.
And how many times throughout the year so far have you felt, because I felt it throughout the year, the fact that when we're on a 3rd and 1, we're on 3rd and 2, we're not going to get it constantly over and over again. We're going to have to punt the ball away. It's 3rd and 1. Today, that was completely different. Today you saw 3rd and 1 and they were able to punch it in. They were able to do a quick slant route. They were able to get the ball across the hash lines enough to get a first down again. You don't see – at least we haven't seen that throughout the year.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of the reason is early in the year, it seemed like it was always 1st and 15, 1st and 20. So then our third downs are 3rd and 9s instead of 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 2s. So you lose the option to run the ball. The defense knows that the edge rushers can just pin their ears back and come right at you because they know you're not handing it off, and if you do, it's just a draw. So now, I mean, short 3rd and downs, manageable third downs, it's making it a lot easier on the offense. And yeah, I think there's a different style with the way Thomas Rawls runs on like 3rd and 1s than the way Marshawn does. They're both physical, but I noticed that Thomas Rawls is like, I'm getting this 1 yard for sure, no matter what. I'm going to run straight forward. And Marshawn maybe looks for the hole a little more, dances a little more, and then he can make bigger runs out of those than Rawls could. But the way Rawls it seems to be better at getting that 1 yard. Lynch wasn't very good at that last year, surprisingly. I know everyone freaked out after the Super Bowl about not running from the 1, but Lynch's stats actually weren't very good from the 1 last year, surprisingly. So I'm pretty happy as well with how that short yardage and 3rd down play has been.
Yeah, you could definitely tell at least between when Marshawn has the ball and when Rawls has the ball because, like you said, yeah, Rawls takes the ball and slams through for that 1 or 2 yard gain, where you see Marshawn a lot of times start to pivot right, pivot left, try to find a gap or create a gap of his own. But in turn, sometimes that ends up being a loss of a yard, a loss of 2 yards because he gets pushed back. So for me, I could obviously tell, and I think for anybody, you can tell how good it is to have Rawls in there to push those 1 or 2 yards. And now I'm just starting to think Russell is maybe starting to feel more and more comfortable because now, I mean, Rawls is what, just close to 1,000 now? Or is he at 1,000 now?
He's I think he's like 214, 220 yards or something away from 1,000. He's only had like 5 or 6 starts. Still got 4 games to play. I mean, the way Jameis Winston's been playing, he'll probably end up winning Rookie of the Year. But Thomas Rawls, he's quickly passing Todd Gurley because Todd Gurley came out so strong. Once he came back from injury, he came out real strong, and now he's slowed down. Rawls is about to be the leading rusher for rookies, and the guy hasn't even been a starter all year. It's been pretty ridiculous. He won't get the recognition he deserves because nobody had ever heard of him before the first time Marshawn got hurt. But he's making people see Marshawn leave a little bit easier. I mean, Marshawn's my favorite athlete ever, favorite Seattle athlete of all time. So I'm obviously not happy about him slowing down and getting hurt, but I was pretty concerned about the running back position, and I'm not as much as I was.
So it's easy to say now then that Rawls is the next man up, obviously. He's the next guy to take over.
I hope so. It's still, I mean, he's looked so great, and that's obvious. He's done everything we've asked. He only made 1 mistake, and that was today with the fumble. But after that, he came out strong. He's actually caught the ball better than he did in college. But it's still a small sample. It's looking like we should be good next year with him, assuming Marshawn isn't back, if he has to retire or whatever. And if Marshawn is back, we got both of them, we're set. But Rawls looks like he could be that guy, and I don't want to put everything into him yet. I still think they'll probably end up drafting a running back next year, assuming Lynch is gone. But the future looks to be pretty bright with Rawls.
Yeah, definitely excited about that. I mean, now we just keep looking at these guys that the Seahawks don't pick up. And at least for me, I heard that a lot during the post-game interviews. During the game today, I was at the game in the press box, went down to the interviews, and that question was brought up. How is it that we as the Seahawks, can continuously go in and find players that go undrafted, go in and find players that people don't want? The best example of that right now, to me, not only is Rawls, but it's Frank Clark. I mean, you saw Frank Clark today, where he's got 3 sacks now in the last 2 weeks and went in there and had a huge sack in the first quarter too. And, I mean, how impressive is that?
I mean, yeah, there was rumblings like a few weeks ago about, besides Tyler Lockett, we hadn't seen very much from the rookie class. And, I mean, with the way the Seahawks philosophy is, you have to throw undrafted free agents into the rookie class category because Seattle takes it so seriously and really gives those guys a chance to win a job. But Frank Clark, he was pretty not involved the first few weeks. He wasn't getting very many snaps. He was getting 20 snaps a game, not making very much of an impact after the crazy preseason he had. And then the last 2 weeks, he's been coming out of nowhere. I don't know if that's just him learning because he's a rookie or what, or if someone lit a fire under him. But he's that extra thing that we need because Irvin's pretty inconsistent. And I mean, Bennett and Averill are obviously always there, but you need that third pass rusher, another guy to get involved in the interior pass rush with Jordan Hill out. And it was just a really nice thing to see number 55 hitting the quarterback today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a nice to see some of those. Obviously, that first sack in the first quarter that took him down and I think pinned him back another six yards or so. So feels good. I mean, now you're starting to see, for a while there, everyone kept talking about how the D's starting to slip, and it is. It's not what it was before, and I think we have to admit that. And we've seen some slippage with the Legion also, but now we're starting to see someone like Sherman playing both sides of the field, something we don't normally see at all. And now he's starting to do it. He did it today.
Yeah, he's going all over the place. I don't remember a catch on him today. I don't know if you do. Did you see someone?
There was no catch on the right side throughout this game today that I saw. I know Teddy went left once, and I talked about that. I tweeted out, I think, that it's going to be a long game for Minnesota if they challenge the one side of the field, because I think at this point you're going to see Richard move to the left or move to the right, especially since so predominantly playing on the right side of the field, and our that left side corner has been just weak, extremely weak. And now the fact that he can go back and forth and maybe help us out, during a play where we know something might happen. So I'm liking that. But Teddy went to the left side once, and he didn't go back there again while Richard was over there.
Yeah, I know that play. He tried to throw deep to Stephon Diggs into the end zone, and Sherman basically ran the route for him. And I saw him jawing a little bit after, and I was like, all right, there's old Sherm. Sherm doesn't talk as much now that he got paid, but it was nice to see him throwing a little trash talk down. And Deshaun Shedd, since he replaced Kerry Williams at the opposite corner, has been pretty solid. I know last week was weird because of all the yardage, but overall, I've been pretty impressed with how he played, and I like him a lot better than Kerry Williams.
How much do you think about Richard as a personality? I mean, I keep looking back now and thinking over and over again that how smart he is, that maybe a lot of it was him just talking it up. I am the greatest, I am the best, and it gave him some extra money. I'm not going to say that he's purposely slowed down, but I'm putting a lot of stock in the fact that he's a great mind, and I think he was able to think ahead and say, the more that I talk, the more that I show that I'm the best, the more I'm going to get paid.
I think most of the time he knew exactly what he was doing. Sometimes, the NFC Championship game against the Niners, I think his emotions got him there. But overall, his trash talk is very calculated, and it's backed up with statistics and facts. And now, I think he was building a marketing campaign. He was marketing himself and making money that way and building a brand. Everyone knows who Richard Sherman is now. He's always up there in jersey sales. Normally, cornerbacks don't get that kind of press unless they do this, like Deion Sanders and stuff. You gotta sell yourself, and then you get paid. Obviously, what he does on the field is what got him paid the money from the Seahawks. But he's been amazing. I don't think just because interception totals are down, I don't think he's had any worse of a season. Really, he's been just as good as always, in my opinion. The safeties have been a little spotty this year with all the stuff up the middle. It seems like, although Earl, what does he have, 4 or 5 picks this year?
Earl has been setting it on fire this year.
I haven't noticed Cam as much this year. Less of those big hits, but that might be because of the style of play now that they have to do with the league. But I
Yeah.
mean, it was. I mean, Minnesota came into the game with the best rushing offense in the league, and I would say I would say that they don't anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
It got shut down quick.
yeah, Seattle passed them in yards per game because AP only had 18 yards, I think.
Yeah. Well, I at the end of the first quarter, AP had I think 8 yards or 6 yards the whole time. Rawls was already over 100. So I think the separation just in those numbers alone, and the biggest thing today too that you saw, they shut down Adrian Peterson quick. They understood how they needed to stop him, when they needed to stop him, and they did it.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of one-on-one tackles that were made on Adrian Peterson, which is not easy. That's a big boy, and KJ Wright I thought played an amazing game in the flat, and I don't know, we broke their will pretty quick. Once it was 21-0, it was. I mean, they shut down, and then it was just easy money. Are we going to get 50 points this game? Type thing.
Yeah, throughout the game too, the amount of 12s that were at that game amazed me. I mean, from the beginning, when everyone's coming in, it was a sea of blue and neon green. So that was amazing to see that. And then by the third quarter, that stadium it cleared out quick, and it turned into just basically a home game for the Seahawks, which was great.
I could hear on the broadcast. I could hear the Seahawks chants, even though we were on offense, which was kind of annoying. But I I did hear that. Back to Sherman, real quick. Do you see him as a Hall of Famer on the track that he's going right now in his career?
I would like to think so. Yeah. I mean, again, this year's been a little down, but I'm not going to equate it to him pulling back or anything or trying less hard than he normally does. But you continue with the track record he's on, and with an extension of he's got quite a while left still. Um, yeah, I could see him definitely pushing for a Hall of Fame bid here in the near future.
Yeah,
But
I mean, obviously he's got a long ways to go, and he's got to keep it up and stay healthy, and still play at a high level. But I mean, he's been pretty unbelievable since he's come to the league. I think he's got like 6 more interceptions than the next person since he's come into the league or something like that. Like, it's crazy. He just has dominated, and that's even with this year only having 1. He's still way ahead of everybody else. He's just sustained an amazing level of play so far since he's come into the league, and I'm anxious to see how many. I mean, Earl has got to be on that track too. See if those two guys are in Canton together someday.
yeah, Earl is just. I've never met or seen someone that's been probably throughout the league the most underrated.
Yeah,
I mean, people talk about Earl here and there, and it's only when they play the Seahawks that they talk about him. But other than that, he's not brought up, first name like someone like Marshawn or like Russell or like Sherman or at times even like Chancellor. Earl gets looked over a lot, and I think that's one of the things that keeps him going. That he's not a big name like he probably should be.
yeah. I mean, his personality is more reserved and a lot quieter than Sherm and Russell's all in the media, and Marshawn trying not to be in the media puts himself in the media. I mean, and Cam with the big hits. So, and Earl just is everywhere. He just does everything. A lot of the time, his impact is made on something you don't even see. He's not even in the picture on TV because he's taking that person over the top, shutting down the deep pass. I mean, how often do you see a really long pass completed against the Seahawks like that gets behind Earl over the middle? It's so rare. It happened last week, and it was so weird. Like it felt so weird to see that Earl chasing someone. It just never happens. He's shut down that middle of the field like a center fielder for 5 years now. How long has he been in the league? 5-6 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Um, I know you texted me before the game and said you weren't too fond of the unis today.
Yeah, different. Isn't that weird?
I don't know. I
So
mean, that's not what they go to very often. They normally go white shirts, blue pants.
they've never done that.
Really?
They have never gone white tops, gray bottoms, never.
Huh.
So seeing that today was just probably the oddest thing I've ever seen. It's just I know that they post all the uniform examples on Instagram and on Twitter the day before, and I saw that, and a lot of the comments were, hey, did you guys make a mistake? Did you mess up on accident? Like, oh, someone put a white top on that gray bottom, and it was real. I mean, I got to the game, and they come out of the tunnel to warm up, and I'm like, that's definitely a white top, gray bottom, and it was different to look at. I guess maybe just not so used to it, but
Yeah.
it worked. It worked.
Yeah, I mean, if that's how they're gonna play, let's do it every time.
Let's keep those jerseys. Yeah, but
Let's talk about how the playoff race and how today was obviously a big game between two teams that were slotted in the playoffs. But what about who else it impacts and how the standings look now?
yeah, I mean, this game alone wasn't just a big game for the Hawks, at least to put them up, give them an extra win. It was a big game for the Vikings, of course, as they were sitting atop of the Central there, and then the Packers. The Packers, I don't think any of us could not have heard about the miracle in Motown on Thursday night. That's a conversation within itself. The whole face mask and everything that went down, and now that's being called the greatest Hail Mary of all time. Packer fans are saying out here in the Midwest that was probably one of the greatest games of all time. So I don't know what to think about that. I think they're putting too much stock into a game that kind of back into the season, and it matters, but in hindsight, it's not as huge as they believe it to be. But this game was big for the Packer fans too. Packer fans watch this game closely. If the Vikings go down to Seattle, then all of a sudden the Packers take the top spot again in the division. And so, bigger game than just for Seahawks fans.
Yeah, I mean it's big for seeding. Now, if the season ended today, the Seahawks will be going to Lambeau to play the Packers, and I don't think that's a result anybody really wants. I would much rather go back to Minnesota and do what we did today. But I think they're going to be going for that 5th seed. The Seahawks are going to be going for the 5th seed. The Vikings could see a little free fall right now. They only get 4 days to rest and play the Cardinals on Thursday at the Cardinals, who are just red hot. They've won 6 in a row. The Vikings are trending down, which is good for the Hawks, because if the Hawks get the 5th seed, they're going to the NFC East winner in the first round of the playoffs, and that could be the Redskins.
Yeah, we've all known how that goes.
I mean, that would be a lot nicer than going to Lambeau in January. That's not. I'd much rather go to Washington and good old FedEx Field.
Yeah. I mean, the Vikings alone right now, like you said, looking at the Cardinals, the Bears, the Giants, and then going back to Lambeau to end the season. So, could they pull out a few more wins? Absolutely. I mean, the Cardinal game, I don't see them. I see them putting up a fight, but I don't see that game going in their favor. The Bears, I can see them taking the Bears down, obviously. The Giants, that'll be a game. That'll be something worth watching, I believe, especially late in the season. And then the Packers, again, I would watch that. I would definitely watch that, only because the fact that you saw the Lions go into Lambeau and win. All these years of the neighbor to the west being put down. Maybe this season is something that that we could put our hats on, and maybe, who knows? Maybe this game against the Packers and Lions was the one that the Packers needed to put them ahead again, put them on top. But I wouldn't count out the Vikings going into Lambeau and possibly trying to squeak out a win there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough, because if we're the 6th seed, I'm gonna have one. I obviously want to play the Vikings rather than the Packers, just because I don't want to play Aaron Rodgers if I don't have to. But I mean, the rest of the way for the Seahawks, the next 3 games, if they lose any of those, they don't deserve to make the playoffs. It would be tough to to handle losing to either the Ravens, the Browns, or the Rams at home. It would be real nice to go into Arizona Week 17 at 10-5 and a chance to just seal up that fifth seed. Moving on, I think the next thing we want to talk about is maybe go into some Mariners news.
Yeah, a lot going on right now with the Mariners.
It's been a whirlwind since DePoto's been hired. He seems like he's making a trade every time I pick up my phone.
Here's the thing, though. The DePoto thing threw me off. It threw me for a curveball right away because you went in there and he came in, and obviously you knew Lloyd was going to leave. He's not going to keep someone from the old regime around. Obviously they kept Edgar. A big part, I think a lot of that is just because you started to see the hitting turn around at the end of the season. But he wasn't going to keep Lloyd around. And then you see him bring in someone from the Angels organization. And all of a sudden, I got kind of worried thinking that is this going to be what you couldn't accomplish in Anaheim that you're now going to try to bring to Seattle? Because we know with the history of the Mariners, it's hard bringing former Angels to Seattle and having them succeed. I mean, that we have a track record of that. I will name the name Figgins, Scott. What's Scott's name?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, it continues. There's a track record of this. So is DePoto trying to create his own what he couldn't do in Anaheim, or is he doing something specifically to the Mariners that we're going to be able to hopefully in the next year or two see actual progress on the field?
Now, this is going to sound weird. I hope he's trying to do what he couldn't do in Anaheim, because the reason he left Anaheim was because the owner and the manager wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do. He wanted to create a team that wasn't bloated with Albert Pujols type contracts, Josh Hamilton type contracts, and just power happy teams. He wants to create a team that can get on base, play good defense, prevent runs, have good pitching, good bullpen. He's obviously got the big contracts that he inherited here, but those are good core players. Not aging as bad as Pujols is, and he wants to be able to create a team in his image, and that is a little bit more analytical, a lot more analytical than Jack Zarenzik and Lloyd McClendon, but sprinkled in with the right type of guys in the front office, on the bench, and things like that. They hired as their scouting director a psychology type guy. McKay. So he's going to focus on player development and work on the mental side of things. That's a little bit different kind of thinking, a little more old school, a little more player friendly, but going along with some of the new school stats. And in Anaheim, they didn't want to listen. Mike Scioscia didn't want to listen to DePoto's stats. He thought it was garbage, and that pissed DePoto off. He felt like he wasn't being used right, and so that created a rift between them, and then he eventually ended up out. But it's definitely a shakeup compared to what we've seen the last 7 years with Jack Zarenzik, that's for sure.
I guess the biggest question, how does you feel about Scott Servais now, a manager that's never really been in charge of much, if anything?
I mean, obviously I don't know much about how he's going to be able to handle the players and everything like that because he's never done it. And that's a huge part. So that's basically just blind trust there, hoping that DePoto knows that he's going to be able to handle that part of it. But I do like that him and DePoto have been working together for so long and have the same philosophies, because seems like there was constant stories every year of rifts or disagreements between Zarenzik and whatever manager he had, not agreeing on philosophy and stuff like that. So if we can kind of eliminate that, and what's going on up top is trickling down to the bottom and vice versa, that sounds good to me. But obviously I don't know how he's going to handle the grind and the day-to-day of managing superstar players as well as players trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, well, I think that's the biggest thing is it's such a open-ended question at this point. We don't know what's going to truly happen, but the one thing that we are seeing and that is happening is we're starting to build up the rotation, build up the outfield, and that's definitely exciting. Like you said, about every day we're seeing something new out of Depoto, and I think that's the nice part. I mean, we had a signing just 3 days ago.
With who? The Nori Aoki. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Nori Aoki, good OBP guy. I think he's had like between a 348 OBP and 355 OBP each year he's been in the league, which is pretty ridiculously consistent. And he hits about 280 and plays. I've heard mixed reports on how he plays defense. I've heard he takes weird routes, but he gets there. He's just kind of unorthodox and kind of an odd player. But I've heard mostly positive reviews, and for the cost, what is it, like 1 year and $6 million for an outfielder that's going to hit at the top of your lineup and get on base? That sounds pretty good to me. And I think they also have an option year in there, so that's awesome. And he's stolen bases in the past as well, which is something that we haven't had in our lineup. We haven't had very much speed in our lineup the past few seasons, so that'll be nice to see between him and Leonis Martin and Ketel Marte. It'd be nice to see some stolen bases finally.
yeah, that's definitely exciting. We got the winter meetings coming up this weekend, obviously. So we know that that's where a lot goes down in just a short amount of days. And one of the bigger ones that we just found out today, obviously, is Iwakuma. It looks like Iwakuma is probably moving out and moving on.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. He was a bargain every year we had him. As one of Jack Szerenczyk's best moves, finding that guy, sticking him in the bullpen at first, and then realizing that he had some pretty good stuff. I think some injuries led to him getting his first start, and then it just kind of went on from there. 3 years, $45 million I saw, which is right about what people projected him to get. People were pretty surprised that he didn't end up back here. I kind of am too. I thought he was pretty happy here. I had always heard maybe Depoto didn't like his medicals. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense at least from LA's perspective because they lose Greinke and then they pick up Iwakuma, so it makes sense for them. But right now it looks like we might have to. Do you see us going out and getting a big arm again, or are we just slowly going to continue what we're doing as far as just packing the back end of the rotation?
I'm not sure. I mean, this whole off season, it's been saying that Iwakuma is going to end up back with the Mariners. He loves it there. They've said that it's their top priority is to get Iwakuma back and all that. So I was kind of under the assumption that it was just going to end up happening. And Depoto's been really clear that they need to go get another quality starting pitcher. And he would always say, we want to get Iwakuma. So now I haven't heard very many names linked to them because it's always just been Iwakuma. So I'm kind of interested to see with everyone arriving at the winter meetings tomorrow. I'm interested to see what comes out and who we're looking into, whether it's trade, which I don't know what we're going to give up. We don't have very much in the farm system. So I'm thinking it's going to have to be some kind of free agent. And, I mean, the names out there aren't super great. And they're not going to be cheap still because pitching is such a hot commodity. It's a little scary right now for the rotation.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, one of the other things too, which I wouldn't call it scary just yet. I wouldn't call it really much of anything. But what about Cano? We've heard some rumbling here and there about Cano's frustration with the new front office. Is that something we should at all worry about?
I'm not worried about it at all. I mean, if you're frustrated, why doesn't he just go look at his bank account? I think I think we're doing our best to keep him pretty happy. I think it's a non-story. I think it'll go away really quick. As soon as the season starts, spring training starts, it's already gone basically. It's just, I think it's fabricated. I mean, if he wants to go back to New York, I mean, he loved New York. I don't blame him for wanting to go back to New York, but I don't see anybody wanting to take on his contract, and I don't see why we'd want to trade him yet. To me, it's a non-story. I don't think there's much to it. Who knows if it was even true?
Yeah, it's definitely something I think that it seemed more fabricated than anything because if you read the articles about it, there was really no direct sourcing as far as something coming from Cano himself. It seemed like more speculation and more subjective kind of journalistic view. So I don't believe it too much. But I mean, the one thing that we do have to, I think, worry about right now is what's going to happen with all these moves we've been seeing going on. We still haven't yet to see a move with someone at first base.
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw somebody get shipped out, which was, I mean, it sounded like as soon as DePoto got here, I feel like the next day I heard reports saying that he didn't want Trumbo around, who he already traded once when he was with Anaheim. So he clearly is not a Mark Trumbo kind of guy. I mean,
That's a bear.
How do you think Mark Trumbo feels?
Here's the thing, Mark Trumbo. There was all that talk when he first got to Seattle that he wasn't excited to be in Seattle. That the whole trade thing wasn't his, wasn't his cup of tea. And then obviously he struggled for so long, and we expected more, and we didn't get any of that. And then all of a sudden he kind of started to warm up. And then when it looks like maybe he could do something for us next year, he's shipped out.
Yeah, and it's just odd to see a guy seemingly be so determined to get rid of one player, even though there's no backup plan behind him. Because I don't think you can consider Jesus Montero a real backup plan. So that might be something we see come to fruition this week as well. Maybe we'll have a new first baseman by the end of the week. I don't know. It's definitely going to be addressed at some point, because he's not going to go into the season with Montero as the starter. I can't see that happening.
I feel like DePoto might have a shorter string for some of these guys that have been around for us longer, and that we've given more rope to than we probably should have. And like the biggest one, Jesus Montero, obviously. I don't see DePoto keeping Jesus around as long as Jack Z would have done.
Yeah, he got himself into shape last season finally and got some time in the bigs, but he still just doesn't seem like an everyday kind of player. Maybe he can hit lefties, and DePoto will go find a good platoon option to go with Montero. But I don't. Maybe they'll convert someone. Maybe they'll convert Nelson Cruz to play some first base. I'm not sure. I think that's everyone's dream, but we haven't heard anything really to that yet. But I mean, it's a big hole right now. It's besides the number 2 starter in the rotation, it's probably the second biggest hole we have. He said that he wants to get another back of the bullpen type guy, a number 2 starter, and a first baseman. So I think we could have a lot to talk about in the next episode.
Yeah, I mean, definitely too. The more that I'm looking at DePoto and looking at the end of Jaxie's tenure with Seattle, you start to see all the people that we were excited to watch. I mean, I remember, I think we were together when we were talking about Dustin Ackley's first home game when he got called up. We were talking about Brad Miller. We were talking about Nick Franklin, and slowly but surely, all of these guys have just left, and we've been kind of gutted of what we thought was going to be the young, new era in Seattle baseball.
Yeah, it's Ackley's gone, Smoke's gone, Franklin's gone, Miller's gone, Holton can't stay healthy, and Paxton and Walker are still just scratching the surface and hopefully turn into something. But it's just his prospect pool, Zarenzik prospect pool, just was a disaster for the most part. I mean, Seager's been awesome, but his hit rate, Zarenzik's hit rate on draft picks has just been so bad, as well as trades. It's just, yeah, it was long overdue, I think, that he's out.
Are you as excited about Ketel Marte as I am?
Yeah, it's tough because it was such a small sample size last year. But if he's anything like the player he was in AAA last year and when he got time in the bigs. It's a guy that can get on base, that has speed, plays about average defense at short. But if he's going to be a guy that we can stick at leadoff or number 2 spot in our lineup every day, I mean, that's so valuable to have a legitimate MLB caliber shortstop. Most teams don't. Shortstop's a pretty weak position in the league overall. That's why you'll see people pay Ian Desmond a ton of money because he's slightly above average, and it's going to be interesting. It's a huge piece in our 2016 season, I think. Don't you? I mean, if he doesn't pan out, what are we looking at? Chris Taylor?
Yeah, all of a sudden we got to start scrambling. But again, it's one of those things where we get a new GM, and how many new GMs have we seen? I mean, yeah, we had an okay small sample stretch in the late 2000s, but we haven't seen good baseball around for years and years. And we've seen new people come in and new people go. I want to say right now that I'm going to do the same that I did with Jack C. I'm going to do the same that I've done with the GMs in the past, and I'm going to give them a year or two to show me something, because we obviously can't expect the Mariners to go in and win it all next year. So, we'll see. I guess it's all going to be, again, like you said, sample sizes throughout the year and see where we're heading and how we're going to do, because I think right now on paper you're seeing depth. I like depth. We haven't seen depth in a long time, but you can't obviously win a World Series strictly on just depth.
Yeah, I mean, Dipoto said he wants to come in and make the lineup longer because they obviously have that good core. He wants to lengthen it with some more quality players and get better on defense. And, I mean, I'm a little bit more into the new school statistics than you are, but I like that he has a philosophy, regardless of what our stance is on old school, new school stats and everything. I like that he came in, said, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to do. And then everything he's done has fit with that philosophy that he stated in his opening press conference. Like he seems like he has a plan, where I felt like Jack Z was kind of looking for home runs, and that was it. Didn't really know what his next move was, and then he just reacted. I feel like there's a plan with Dipoto. I mean, we could look back on this in 5 years when Dipoto's been fired and we've been terrible, and I look really stupid. But I'm pretty optimistic overall about our future with Dipoto. I don't know how it translates to 2016. He had a lot of work to do, still has a lot of work to do to get that roster in order, but I don't know. How do you feel exactly with him?
I think, like I said, I think it all is in time. And it was easy, I think, to look back and see what Jack Zduriencik did with the Milwaukee Brewers, where he went out and basically gutted that team to give them 1 year, to give them something to fight for 1 year. And guess where most of that team ended up? They ended up in Kansas City, and we all know how that turned out. And so if Dipoto's doing what he was trying to do, like you said, in L.A., where he's trying to kind of get rid of some pieces where they can open up some doors, then I'm okay with that. Then I think that can do something for us. And at the end of the day, I want to see, obviously, some of that Seahawks magic rub off on the Mariners. I want to see that Pete Carroll type attitude rub off on the Mariners. I don't know if Cervantes is that kind of person, but Dipoto seems like maybe he can be that optimistic type of cornerstone guy that's going to help this team think a little bit differently.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope he builds a culture here, and that it's, what you're going to get when you're coming to Seattle. You know what type of team you're going to be playing, and we stick to that. It's been too long since we've had a good team, and I'm ready to start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully at the end of this week we get some resolution onto what our roster is going to look like for next year.
At this point, I don't even care if it's a light at the end. I just turn on a flashlight for me. Turn on someone light a match. I mean, at the end of the year, it was like, why are we going to these games? why are we even here? Why am I spending $15-20 to come in here, and then I'm spending $7.50 on a beer unless I get there 3 hours early to go to the pen? I'll make the same drive to Tacoma and check the Rangers games out because I can get in for $5 and then drink $2 tall boys on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, just give me something. Give me a reason to show up to this ballpark because I will give you my money gladly if you give me a product that I can be proud of.
I agree. It's I mean, we're diehard fans, and it's got to be really frustrating. I mean, people to stop showing up as soon as we start getting out of the race and stop watching, and it's hard for me to want to watch even when I know that I'm just going to see strikeouts and strikeouts. So now it's nice to see that we're going to change the way we play, and we're going to get players that are all around baseball players, not just one-dimensional power hitters and can't walk and strike out a lot. I'm excited to see some real athletic baseball players in a real major league lineup, and not talk about how our prospects aren't performing anymore and aren't living up to expectations ever. And I feel like they're due. It's been 15 years since we've had playoff baseball. I mean, I was 9 years old.
That's crazy, isn't it? That it's been
10 years old.
This long.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be nice. I mean, obviously, we're seeing a younger generation that's falling in love with the Seahawks every day, and that younger generation thinks that we've always been good. And I think the younger generation doesn't understand that the Mariners used to be good. We used to be something to be proud of. You know, obviously, we always hang on to 95, and we try to look at 2000 like it's as important as it was. But we used to have something to be proud of. And people used to talk about us in the baseball circles. And now, you know, we've become, I guess, what, you know, the Royals used to be back in the day, you know, just these teams that no one really cared about.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that's what people talk about Seattle, like outside of Seattle. It's like, oh, it's just the Mariners. And I'm ready for that to change.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think we're going to see some of that change here, and we're going to see what happens with the winter meetings coming up this weekend. And the nice thing about what we got going on here, we can get on at any time and really kind of talk about this and discuss it. And I hope that, obviously, like you said, we're bigger fans than probably most when it comes to baseball, football, and that includes Husky football, Husky basketball, and you know, the sports that we have around the Northwest. So I'm hoping that we can do what it feels like we did here and talk about it a little bit more in depth than what you see. And it's not just the same 3 hours worth of talking about Russell Wilson and Sierra or something.
Or Jimmy Graham's targets and stuff.
Yeah. I hope we can talk about what the fans like to talk, what we like to talk about, because at the end of the day, it's we are the fan.
Yeah. So how do you think this went?
I like it. I think it's good. I think we got to get used to not being there to look at each other. I think it's easier when you're in a studio and you're staring at each other and you can say, I'm ready to talk. Right now, we're really working on that.
Yeah, well, I'm ready to go again next week, man. It's just fun.
Let's do it. And do you have the dog with you right now?
No.
Oh, I kept hearing barking.
That's not me.
Something's barking somewhere. I don't know what it is. But all right.
All right, episode 1, Kingdome Cut. Nailed it.
Yeah, see you next week.
All right.